Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 785. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, I was asked, why shouldn't I say yes and start everything that comes my way? As we celebrate the impending publication of Managing Work Intake, penned by myself and Jeremy Berriault, we continue the discussion of work intake scenarios that bedevil teams and organizations. Controlling work entry is controlling WIP, which helps us be our best selves. But are there times when you have to say yes, even when you don't want to? We'll also have a visit from Jeremy Berriault, bringing his Evolutionary Agilist Column to the cast. Mr. Berriault and I discuss the concept of root cause. Everybody is looking for one, but very few really understand the concept. The questions were asked by Thomas M. Cagley Jr., Megan E. Cagley. Late in the second day of a 3-day workshop, a hand came up at a table in the back of the room. I had noticed the person getting increasingly fidgety all day. The class had just finished an exercise on controlling work in progress. Before they spoke, I noticed the people at the table edging away from them. They threw down the proverbial gauntlet with the question, "So why exactly shouldn't I immediately start anything I'm asked to do, even if I have other things on my plate? My boss always says thank you and wishes everyone would help him out." One of the common tropes in Agile and Lean circles is the adage, "Stop starting, start finishing." The question challenged that closely held belief. Challenging closely held beliefs is where real growth occurs. This was a serious question, and we had time, so I chose to involve the class in coming up with an answer to the question. I began the discussion by reframing the question. I broke the class into teams and asked them to decide when the right thing to do was something new that had not been planned. 2 of the usual suspects popped up immediately and in every team. 1, when production is down. 2, when the CEO tells you to do it. During the debrief, almost no one considered the risk of pushing back on either of those 2 items. No one considered it possible that the CEO or other executive knew or cared about whether other work might be impacted. I would hope that they were wrong, actually. Some of the more interesting reasons, albeit less universal, that we exposed included when another team needs something for an important project that wasn't planned for, when an important stakeholder asks for something urgently, when a large piece of work is blocked waiting for a vendor to respond. We have a service level objective to start working on any incident within 4 hours. The person who called this item out in class noted less emphatically that starting and completing were 2 different things. Everyone laughed. When I think it's in my best interest. Interestingly, this was not put on the list by the person who asked the question, but rather by someone at another table who is from the same company. Finally, we have spare capacity. The problem with the list, except for number 1 and number 8, is that they're a tangled mess of organizational, planning, and communication failures that lead to pressure to break work intake discipline. We all agreed, even the person who posed the question, that taking in unplanned work in each of the scenarios had consequences. Individuals might accept those consequences, at least in the short term, whereas teams might not want to assume those risks. For example, the individual's best interest scenario suggested that at least one person in the class was introspective enough to consider the trade-off that we have all considered at some point in our careers. Come on, be honest with yourself. Bottom line, there are reasons people jump the work intake queue or chronically start more work than they can finish. I can't argue with the production being down. I've been there. So long as it's not your team's code that caused the problem, fixing a problem is a rush. For the rest of the list, the consequences outweigh the potential benefits. Sometimes it might be in the long run, but the piper always has to be paid. Now that we had the reasons why we might break work intake discipline, I challenged the teams in the class to consider the consequences at the individual, the team, and organization levels. We'll consider their answers in 2 weeks on SPaMCAST 787. Jeremy Berriault, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
It is a pleasure to be here. I love being here. It's awesome.
You're right. It is awesome.
It's, of course, us two together, it's always awesome.
We make a fairly decent splash. God forbid we should cannonball into the same pool. That would be a hot mess. They would be cleaning up that pool for a long time, and all that water else go. Oh well. Regardless. Root cause. What do people mean by root cause?
Oh, well, I wrote a book on root cause. Most people, when they talk about root cause, when they say, oh, we did a root cause analysis, we found the root cause for this, like whatever issues, in my experience, they look at the surface level. They look at it as, oh, Johnny and Jane working on the QA team just couldn't do it. They got overloaded with work. So then we got to lower their workload so that we can get the work done on time. And I guess they found a cause. Actually, no, they more found a symptom and they didn't find the cause. So yeah, the overload of work, that's something that happened. But to me, it's why are they overloaded with work? Like, what is going on in the background that's causing it? Could it be the actual, like their flow, their steps, or how they get the work done? Is there a bottleneck somewhere? Is there, like, are there systems, like, are they using a Commodore 64 to do the testing? And I'm just using QA as an example. They're not digging deeper. There are a lot of people, they find that it's easier just to either point the finger at a group or at individuals and just say, okay, they messed up and we got to help them so they don't mess up again. But what will happen is, and this is something I've seen a lot, is when that happens and they blame individuals or different teams, they change the individuals on the team that still have the same process or the root cause that's truly going on in the background, and it happens again. And then it turns into some distrust with that team or those group of individuals because they just can't get the work done.
Well, and they brought their problem to somebody and nobody did the due diligence to actually find a way to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people misunderstand the concept of root cause?
I think the misunderstanding of the concept is just not taking the time to truly understand what it means. And I think when you look at the definition, just like the two words itself, like the root cause, like 3 words, right? Root cause analysis. Their view is that, okay, we got to find the root cause. Oh, this happened. Oh, we got our sprint for this. Use a sprint, for example. We had 20 tickets that we wanted to do in this sprint. We only did 10. The reason why we did 10 was John messed up and just couldn't get the work done. And I was actually on a webinar a little while ago, and they were talking about their sprints, and then there's like how they do their retrospectives and how they found the root cause. And the way they brought it up is like, oh, the root cause was QA was overloaded with work. So to fix the root cause is to get the developers to stop, just do what they're doing, and then help QA finish off the tickets and finish off the testing. And now when they did that, they showed a graph and they showed proof that kind of the number of tickets and velocity kind of started increasing, but it was increasing at such a small amount. I don't think they didn't really find the root cause. They were just kind of shifting the work to get it done. They didn't, what people don't realize is like to truly find the root cause, it is actually a lot of work. In my book, when I talk about it, I go into a story. It's almost a story format, and finding a root cause, going through is like, hey, this is what happened, part of a story, and like chapter by chapter. And reading through it, you will find the way I detail it. It is a long process. It's not a fun process either, depending if you like stats and digging for issues. But it does. I think people just don't want to do that work. So they just feel it's like, hey, if we can just do it quickly, point the blame, then we found the root cause.
So what you're saying is that people don't really do root cause analysis because they're lazy.
Yeah. They're okay, maybe not lazy, but they see the answer, they see an answer right away and they just take it. And they don't want to dig deeper into it. And I think they still see, like when they see that answer, to them, that's the root cause. But if they don't understand truly the definition of root cause and what the flow is needed to be done to get there, then if they don't know it, they just say, okay, cool, we did our job. Awesome. Go team, we'll fix it later. And and we got metrics that show we did improve. And most of the time, there will be some improvement, but they are leaving a lot of opportunity for drastic improvement if it's done right. And once it's done right, they have a lot more opportunity to resolve the root cause. And if it's something that they cannot resolve due to financial constraints or just technology constraints or whatever, they found out there is a constraint, then they can at least mitigate it and try to avoid it as best as possible. And when you do that, they will still have those improvements.
In the example that you gave, the developers do stuff, they toss it over the wall to the QAs, and the QAs don't get their work done because they're obviously lazy QAs. No, I'm not going to say that.
Okay,
so that's not the root cause.
That's not the root cause.
Obviously not. How do they go about determining whether or not their fix of having the developers jump over the wall and help the testers test actually worked? How did they prove that worked?
So the metrics they used was velocity and throughput. Velocity
of what?
Of the story points going through. And I know that's a whole other conversation. We could talk about that, Tom. But these are the metrics they used on how they showed their improvement.
Oh, of course they improved. Who created the story points?
Well, it's the team that creates the story points on the tickets.
All right. So again, they proved to themselves that they improved. What was the business outcome?
The business outcome, they were just happy to see that stuff was getting done.
How many more features got delivered? How many more clients did they get? What was the business impact?
Yeah. So I can't say that because they didn't use those type of metrics.
So they really don't know whether or not what they did actually had an impact on the flow of anything.
No. What they were focused on was just the improvement of the team itself and what they said they were going to get done.
And the team in this case is the testers.
Well, they were focused on the testers, yes, but they were a roundabout way. The way this webinar went, they were talking about like the team as a whole was improved. Those were the words they used. The team improved.
I'm just trying to pick you down. And obviously,
no, and I know.
And I agree. We both agree that what they didn't get to is a root cause, and that the root cause may have been something that was more systemic, like the fact that they weren't really measuring a value flow, or they weren't focused on the flow of work.
And one of the things they didn't get too far into, and I remember there was this one part they were talking about, and I think it's unfortunate because they were so close to actually finding the root cause and they didn't even realize it, was that when they mentioned that while the testers, the QA team, they do a lot of testing. And they said, we're just going to get the developers to help them do it. And I believe we had to talk about this before, if not, this is another conversation we can have later on, was most QA teams that I've initially started working with and started getting through did a lot of over testing, in that there is a feel that, we have to have for this one story, we have to have 300 test cases to make sure that this story works, just due to all the variables that are involved. And I'm grossly exaggerating on that.
I hope so.
Yeah. But we have an issue within the QA industry with over testing, and that they focus on certain variables and without asking the right questions on how things are going to work, or how things are supposed to work or should work, or at least an understanding how the code that's being developed, how it works overall, that the field is that, okay, well, as long as we throw in all these test cases at it, then we did our job. And the business is okay with that, because not understanding what QA really is and how it works, they see as like, you did, for this release, you did like 400 test cases. Awesome. You must have tested a lot of stuff. And if something happens, yeah. And then something happens, you're like, you guys didn't test this at all, did you? So, like, what if I were who had done this webinar? If I was the one that did the retrospective and looked at this, I would have focused more on like the processes in place and what was actually being done. I wouldn't focus on individuals, because like focusing on individuals when you're doing root cause doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anyone. And most of the time, those individuals, they were probably just trained wrong, or they were told to do something, or they weren't told anything and they just did what they thought was right. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I think people generally do what they think is the right thing. They want to do the right thing. Jeremy, how would people continue the conversation?
They can reach me through my LinkedIn. They can do a search for Jeremy Berriault in Toronto. You'll find my nice little dapper picture there, and you can connect through me through there, or you can connect through my website at berrieandassociates.com.
Super. Until next time, Jeremy, thank you for being on the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
It's an honor to be here.
In Reread Saturday News, this week we begin the read of Actionable Agile Metrics Volume 2, Advanced Topics and Predictability by Daniel S. Vacanti. This is the second Vacanti book that we've done on Reread Saturday. The first one was Actionable Agile Metrics, which ended up being Volume 1. This one is 260 pages, 14 chapters, broken into 2 sections. I anticipate completing the reread on March 31st. So buy a copy, link in the show notes, read along. There's also a link to this week's full entry of Reread Saturday. This whole idea of work intake is a big deal. It's IT's dirtiest little secret. Jeremy Berriault and I are putting together a cohort-based training class. We'll run multiple weeks with very short, concise lectures, lots of exercises to help you tackle this dirty little secret that none of us like to talk about. It isn't sexy, but let's face it, if you don't have control over work entry, everything else doesn't work. Whether it's waterfall, agile, RUP, anything, it all goes to pieces. There's some other words I could use, but just face it, that's the problem. We don't want to talk about it. Let's tackle IT's dirtiest little secret. Link in the show notes to get more information about that cohort-based training, and then get on the list so that when our book, Managing Work Intake, comes out in early January, you get notified. We look forward to that conversation. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, number 785, will feature my conversation with Kevin Surish, AI inventor, futurist, keynote speaker. We discussed the hype and promise of AI. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?